Hi, this is Kathy from In Your Corner, where decision, commitment, and accountability will put you on the path to your destiny. We operate in a society where we are bombarded with communication. There are so many forms of communication and so many outlets to communicate. Instant messaging, social media, email, snail mail, or face-to-face. It's no wonder the nation's polarized, and we all know that polarization leads to division. Why do people communicate versus why should you communicate is the key to effective communication. My guest today is here to help us make sense of it all. I want to introduce you to Corey Emanuel, Omnimedia. Corey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kathy.
So tell me, how many times have you been misunderstood?
Ooh, do we have time for that? I think particularly in the era of text messaging and smartphones, we all have probably been there at one time or the other. From the infamous all caps that you had on accidentally, and someone thought you were screaming at them, to etiquette. How should you respond in a text message if you're talking to your boss versus your girlfriend or boyfriend? So I think we've all been in that scenario. I've certainly been in that scenario where sometimes you say it's probably just easier for me to pick up the phone at this point. I've definitely been misunderstood.
I understand that. Do you believe that there's a certain point in communication when you're communicating virtually that a phone call, the conversation has turned to where a phone call will solidify the conversation better or solidify the communication?
Absolutely, because with as much as we love technology, as much as we are dependent on it nowadays, it is not always tried and true. So sometimes we do have to say, this internet connection is not working. Let me just pick up the phone and call somebody. And sometimes we even have to resort to a landline versus our mobile phone. There are times where picking up the phone and more traditional lines of communication are going to be more sufficient. I'm currently a doctoral student, and most of my classes have been virtual, and that has been a very wonderful, convenient, fulfilling experience for me, actually. And I was actually introduced to that when I was working on my master's in a hybrid format. So some classes we met in person, and some we met virtual, and I really found it to be a really good balance. I think that we live in a society now where you still need both. There's something still that is to be said about being able to meet face to face with people and be able to feel their energy. So I'm an advocate of both.
Agreed, Corey. I agree with you specifically. Recently I was at a restaurant and I observed two people having dinner where no communication was occurring, since both appeared to be more preoccupied with their smart devices than with each other. With so many forms of communication and distractions, it's no wonder we find ourselves frustrated and unfulfilled. Do you see this occurring more and more where people are not communicating along the traditional methodology, and how is that impacting our lives going?
Absolutely. I see it more with millennials, I have to say, even though I consider myself to be a millennial. But I'm noticing that there seems to be a shift where people are becoming more aware that they are disconnected. So people are becoming more intentional when, say, on a date or in a dinner meeting where they, put their phone on airplane mode or turn it, upside down. So I'm seeing that more often. But there are a lot of teenagers in particular who I know the parents have to say, okay, this is dinner time. We are going to actually sit down as a family and have a conversation face to face. So I think that there's a little bit of both going on. And I think that, we all need balance in our life. You can work and study and read articles and talk to friends on Snapchat till the cows come home. But I think we all need that time where we kind of power down for the day. And I think that is going to be the best way moving forward, is just to create balance between the two.
I agree. Balance is definitely the key. So the real question is, why do we communicate versus what constitutes effective communication? Corey, when I think about effective communication, I think of a call to action. I think that you're looking for approval or response, some level of concurrence or something when you look at communication versus communicating for effectiveness. How do you perceive that?
I totally agree 100%. I think, again, studying human behavior and emotion, I know that at the core of all of us as human beings, we all want to know that we matter. And one of the key ways to sort of know if you matter is to share your voice, to be able to communicate with someone else about your thoughts, your opinions, your ideas. So it's something that we're constantly doing. Again, back to that validation that you spoke about a moment ago. It's just in us. We want to communicate. Even babies, they know that if I want to get what I want, I got to scream. Or throw a stone. So yeah, it's who we are at our core.
Agreed. So do you find communication, Corey, to be polarizing such that if we're communicating virtually and we don't share the same ideology, does that divide us as a nation or as along race lines or as individuals as opposed to uniting us around the key effective objective of what the purpose is we're communicating for? What I'm finding in a virtual environment is the way you perceived what I wrote changes your perception of who you perceive me to be, as opposed to what I'm trying to get across, as opposed to a face-to-face conversation would eliminate that.
You're right. That's why we're really facing what I consider to be this epidemic of cyberbullying, right? Where people are able to kind of spew whatever it is they want to say and then hide behind an avatar, and I think that we're seeing that a lot in politics, where it's just a free for all every day, where people are out there and they're trolling, as they say. So yeah, that it is a growing issue. It is one that I know that some of my colleagues are very much interested in seeing how we kind of move that needle in a more positive direction. But I know we still have a ways to go.
Definitely. But do you think that the use of technology is without coming together face to face to really pick up on a person's perception and their body language just going virtual is really contributing to that deterioration of effective communication?
I agree. I do, because I feel as though there is less accountability. There seems to be more accountability when you have to stand, right there in front of someone else and communicate your ideas and your thoughts versus hiding behind a phone or a computer screen. There's just something. It's just easier. I don't have to be in front of that person and deal with the repercussions or the consequences of what I say or what I share. So yeah, it is definitely a growing issue that I think we've definitely got to figure out how do we get ahead of this thing.
So I think it's important to have rules of engagement when you're dealing in social media, so you can define the boundaries and parameters of what is respectful, decent, wholesome conversation that gets to the purpose that we're having this dialogue for.
Right. Absolutely. So again, I think what social media has allowed us to do is all have this, this identity that we present, right? And sometimes, again, we might present things in an online environment or a virtual environment that we would never do in person. So it's created this great means of communication. But again, it has to be done in a positive regard. So I think one of the ways that we can see it done positively is through hashtags, right? We see a lot of causes. We see a lot of movements. Black Lives Matter. That was really a hashtag movement to shed light, on the injustice, particularly of Black people of color. But it also brought people together, united people in a positive way. So I think that there has to, going back to what I said earlier, there needs to be an intention behind everything that we do when it comes to communication. And I think that in these virtual environments, one of the ways to sort of build a group of like-minded people is through hashtags. And I think that we will see more of those types of movements going forward in terms of unifying and bringing people together versus dividing us, as we often see.
Corey, I think it's great the use of hashtags in order to unify people as opposed to dividing them. What, if anything, can digital natives learn from baby boomers born between 46 and 64 in regards to communicating in the digital age?
That's a really, really good question. You know, I was born in '82, so I'm an '80s baby. And so I still know, you know, what that experience was like to pick up the phone and be talking to someone till you fall asleep at night. You know, so I do believe that, you know, digital natives, you know, while they are very text dependent, and sometimes I've even seen them not know what to do when their phone rings. You know, I think that there is definitely something that can be learned from baby boomers in that we need to still be able to pick up the phone and be able to articulate our words, how we're feeling, what our thoughts are, versus just always typing them out. Because again, as we discussed earlier, there's so much that can be lost in text conversation. So I think that one of the things that we can definitely learn from baby boomers is just picking up the phone and having a real heart-to-heart conversation with other people.
It's great that you bring that up, because that segues into my thinking of, if you meet someone through an online dating app, what should be the communication expectations? How are those defined?
You know, I think we see that, you know, I definitely have friends who have met and actually even gotten married from online dating. And as I talk to them, because I'm very curious about these experiences, particularly in the beginning, you know, what is proper etiquette? Do you kind of get away with things that maybe you wouldn't have because you met them online versus out at a party? And, you know, typically across the board, people say, no, I still expect the same type of communication experience if I met this person out at a bar versus meeting them online. So there still seems to be this sort of golden standard that you need to put in the work, you need to put in the effort to get to know me in verbal communication.
You know, I found that to be true, because I can say that my daughter met her now husband through an online dating service. And I remember when she first introduced him to us, I was a bit taken aback by how they met, because I'm from a generation where that just seems like that's not normal.
Right.
But when it came time for him to marry my daughter, he actually came and asked for my daughter's hand. Of me and my husband were pretty shocked by the fact you could meet somebody online and they would have such great manners and etiquette. So it was pretty shocking. I'm glad you touched upon that. You know, currently in the news, Robert Kardashian, the brother of the famous Kim Kardashian, was taken to court for sharing nude pictures of ex-girl Blac Chyna online. It has been argued that since Blac Chyna has a reputation for sharing her own risque pictures, she shouldn't feel any sense of shame or humiliation. How do you perceive that?
You know, this is a really hot topic right now. You know, again, we're in this communication age where we're having a lot of fun and flirting, you know, with people via text. And, you know, in the moment, it feels innocent. And you feel like, oh, this is just going to be shared between me and this other person. But you never know when things are going to turn, and when someone's going to get upset, and when someone's going to get mad at you and do what he did. I think that you can't make a blanketed statement. You can't make a blanketed assumption and say, oh, well, since I sent you a new picture or I sent you a risque picture, you now have permission to then send that to the entire world. You know, I think that's certainly unacceptable, and just completely goes beyond the boundaries that would make anyone feel not shameful or humiliated. So I do think that was a bad move on Rob Kardashian's part. And from what I understand, she winning the argument in court with the help of a really good lawyer. So
Way to go, Corey, because self-respect does mean something in a person's privacy, and certain things that are shared between two individuals in a relationship. Just because things change does not mean that gives you a right to post this content. So it can be indeed humiliating. I want to thank you for sharing your experience with our listeners. I know many of them can benefit from our dialogue on effective communication. Thank you, Corey, for sharing your experience. Let us know how our listeners can get in touch with Corey Emanuel Omnimedia.
Pretty easy to find me. Corey, Corey, Emanuel, Emanuel, on all platforms, across all platforms. That is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you can even email me at info@CoreyEmanuel.com.
Lovely, Corey. It's a pleasure having you on my show today, and I hope to have you back again.
Thank you, Kathy.
If you're struggling with effective communication, I can help you. Visit me to schedule a free consultation at inyourcorner.com. In the meantime, stay connected by subscribing to the podcast and join me every Wednesday. See you soon.